This happened almost a year ago. It's something that's still given me a charming amount of PTSD. I'm currently on anxiety medication for it, even though I have all the facts now. I grew up in a small town. Just for a little bit of context, I was one of 3 children. I hated my stepdad, and I hated living in my hometown. I was determined to get the hell out of there from a young age. So at 15, I started working at one of the 2 local pizza places. By 16, I was able to afford a car, albeit a beat-up one, but it allowed me to get on the road and make deliveries, which meant more money. I had previously been robbed during a pizza delivery at a Super Bowl party once. I was held at knife point and had to forfeit all my pizza, as well as my cash. This oddly enough didn't bug me at all much. Don't know why. To this day I barely ever think about it. But after this I took to carrying a can of pepper spray. So I'll move on now to the incident. It was late at night, almost closing time, which is 1 a.m. We'd gotten a call to deliver these 3 pizzas over to the next town over, which is a place that is out of our delivery range, but sometimes there are circumstances that allow us to. So it was a service policy for one of those specific drivers to make this delivery. I was never one of them, but on this night I was. I knew the trick of the trade, so when I saw the garlic bread bag on top of these specific pizza orders, I knew what I was doing. My assistant manager at the time even specifically instructed me to get the envelope from the customer, and that he was sure they were really big tippers, implying that I would get a service fee. I didn't want to conduct this. My hands were sort of tied. Desperation does that to a person. I just wanted to finish my shift, so I took off with haste. It took me about 30 minutes to get to the location. It was in a very sparsely populated neighborhood. I went to the door and was greeted by a girl. I actually went to school with her, so that put me at ease a little bit, but she had changed. A lot. She was really pretty at one point and super outgoing. Now she looks like she developed a problem, which isn't incredibly uncommon in my town. She greeted me with a smile and accepted the pizzas. Out of the darkness, my arms were restrained behind my back, and mere seconds later, I found the barrel of a .45 revolver placed against my head. I instantly pleaded for my life, which seemed only to amuse them. When I didn't have enough money in it, he demanded my work money. For a little context, pizza places will typically tell you that the drivers don't carry more than $20 in change. This is a lie. This is mostly said so that it doesn't seem like we're carrying more money in case of a robbery situation. They knew this. The guy with the gun hit me in the face when I didn't produce the rest of the money. I usually leave this in my car, and he didn't accept my explanation. At that point, I was forced into the house. I screamed for help, but it accomplished absolutely nothing. The guy that was holding me threw me onto the couch, and the girl had closed the door. I explained to them that I wasn't aware of any policy, and if they had an issue to please take it up with my assistant manager. I know how ridiculous that sounds. The guy with the gun, who was clearly under the influence, asked for one driver specifically. He asked why he didn't show up. I told him he was making other deliveries. It took everything in me not to cry at this time. After asking me some other questions that I couldn't answer, he put the gun to my head and pulled the hammer back. He then instructed me to call the other driver and have him present himself. I slowly complied, but instead of grabbing my phone, I grabbed my pepper spray. It felt stupid, but I saw a brief opportunity to get the hell out of there. I elbowed the pistol out of my face and then sprayed the canister into his. I didn't take any chances. I sprayed him in the eyes, nose, and inside his mouth. The smell of that stuff irritates my sinuses when I think about it. I didn't ever get hit by it. Now, I've been in exactly 3 fights in my life before this, and I got my ass kicked in all 3. But after spraying him, I hit him in the crotch and then slammed my fist down onto his face. We wrestled for the pistol for a few seconds. I managed to get it on the floor and kicked it away. The other guy ran for it, but I beat him to it. Once I had the gun in my hand, he backed off and asked me to leave. I'm not a violent person in the slightest, but I'll admit that I still get joy out of the look on his face when he saw me holding the gun. I was on cloud 9 for a few minutes, but once I got a healthy distance from the house, I pulled my car over and threw up. I then realized I was still holding the pistol. Upon further observation, I noticed that it only had 1 bullet in it, and it wasn't the chambered one. He could have pulled that trigger about 4 times before I got killed. When I got back to the restaurant, my manager and I got into a heated argument over not bringing his product back. I left. Wasn't having it after my night. When I got home, I told my stepdad about what happened. He would actually later go find my manager about it. I don't know what happened, but when I got to work on Monday, I clocked in with no issues. I worked there for about another month, then I decided I'd rather go struggle somewhere else. I thought it was my time. I've now moved 3 hours away and have my own 2-bedroom apartment and a culinary student. Through my program, I got a job working at, you guessed it, a pizza restaurant. But it's a gourmet pizza place, and it's something that allows me to take pride in my cooking. I've since bought a gun. I'm still extremely cautious about things, but life is looking up. I was a delivery driver for 8 months here in Midtown Detroit. It felt like years. I've had some really crappy jobs since I dropped out of college, but being a delivery driver was by far the worst thing I've ever had to do for money. It goes way beyond just being talked to like a moron by some heavy-set Armenian shop owner, or being screwed off a tip by some white trash bimbo who lies about the lateness of her order. I've been robbed, beaten up, and almost killed while on the job. That leads to my last delivery I ever drove for Armenian's pizza place. The fancy townhouse beating my buddy suffered had me paranoid. Borrowing a .44 revolver from my buddy started me thinking that maybe I should just go ahead and quit. It was surreal in the extreme, being given a little rundown of how to load and fire the thing, or best to shoot someone if you don't want to outright kill them. I felt like I was enlisting in the army or something. I had to remind myself this was a goddamn pizza delivery job. So I rock up to the address I'd been given, the 2 pizzas on the back seat, when I noticed it's really goddamn quiet. There's a public park on the other side of the street, and thanks to a row of bushes, I can't see anything approaching from that angle. I get a bad feeling, like a really bad feeling, and take out the .44 from my glove box. That's when I see this dude emerge from the bushes on the other side of the street. He's wearing one of those goddamn clown masks. This was right when all those attention-starved assholes were putting on clown masks and scaring people for the sake of getting that perfect viral video. But I didn't take the chance. I just start tapping on the glass with the revolver in hand, looking over at the guy with the gun plainly in view. He stops, takes one look at the revolver, and then reaches behind his back into his waistband. I just remember cracking the window and shouting, "Don't you do it, man. Don't do it. You don't want to get shot." I'm not a particularly brave guy, but I don't know. The thought of ending up with a wired jaw. The thought of that poor kid who went out to work one night and never came home. I actually think I was ready to kill that son of a bitch in the clown mask. He just wasn't a real person to me. He was a living embodiment of everything I hated about living in this goddamn city. I kept the gun pointed at him as I drove away, the 2 pizzas still in the back seat. I quit the moment I arrived back at the shop. Ermine didn't even act surprised when I handed back my uniform and collected the money I was owed for the shift. It's been a while since I quit that job, but I still think about it most days. It's in the news all the time. Some driver getting robbed or beaten or worse. Everyone seems terrified of automation right now, but it can't come soon enough for some jobs. Jobs that aren't worth losing your life over. I'd gotten 2 orders for the same area of town I mentioned above. One was a pie order for a church fellowship hall, and the other a single pie for a residence. I dropped the pies off at the church first, then headed over to the last customer. When I arrived, I immediately noticed the house looked off-putting, dark and dirty. I was like, please let this be the wrong house, but it wasn't. There was a creepy old, naked doll on the porch, and an empty bird cage hung from one of the trees in the side yard. I got out, grabbed the pizza, and slowly walked up to the house. I tried the doorbell, which was glowing, so I figured it worked. No one answered, so I tried knocking. Again, nothing. Eventually, I get creeped out, so I start walking back to my car. Halfway to my car, I hear, "Psst." I turned around to see an old man with wild and unkempt hair, literally peeking his head out from the back of the house. It was getting dark out, and my patience was draining, so I was not in the mood for someone playing games. I simply said, "Didn't you order this pizza?" and waited for him to answer, but he ducked back out of sight. I just started to turn to leave, but then he peeked out again. I said, "Sir, is this your pizza or not?" And finally, he emerges. He walks up to me carrying a shovel, of all things. He said, "Yeah, man, sorry, I'm just messing. Don't mean nothing by it." To which I responded with the total and held the pizza out. Luckily, that was the end of the transaction, and I was able to get the fuck out of there. I worked the same job for a few years, and had plenty more weird experiences, but then moved on to find something better and safer. If you work delivering items to people at their homes, stay safe, and never go inside their house.